Hi everyone and welcome to Lesson 4, Cinematic Angles. We've been talking about cinematic details before. Today we're going to be talking about cinematic angles. So choosing angles that tell our story well. So let me go ahead and start off with a definition just so we're super clear on what I mean by cinematic angles. So again, the word cinematic refers to like a cinema or movies, filmmaking. So cinematic angle simply means thinking of a story that you write like a filmmaker who chooses the best camera angles to tell the story. So a filmmaker could just set up a camera along a far distance from his set and then just tell everyone to act, and then the camera, because it's far away, would be able to capture everything that was happening. But that would be super boring, right? One time, someone videotaped a play for our family, but they stood way at the back of the auditorium and they just filmed the whole stage. And you couldn't really see what was happening because he didn't zoom in to the characters that were talking. And we also didn't quite know who was talking or what was happening because there weren't these cinematic angles. They weren't choosing the right camera angles to tell the story. We just saw everything, and we did see everything, but it was really boring. So obviously that's not how filmmakers tell their stories. They choose the best camera angles to tell the story. So if it's a super dramatic moment, they might zoom in to the main character. I once saw a really neat angle, and it was someone shot an arrow, and instead of just showing the arrow flying through the air, they kind of took the camera and traveled with the arrow, so you could see the background moving, and but then almost looked like the arrow was still because it was traveling with the arrow. So that might have been computer generated. But anyway, filmmakers are really good about choosing the best angle to tell the story. So we want to do the same thing in our writing because we don't have to just describe the facts as if we were standing in the back of the auditorium. We can zoom in, we can zoom out, we can pan up, pan down. We can think like a filmmakers, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So what are our options? Oh, excuse me. Looks like wanted to share one more very interesting thing with you. This is another thing that filmmakers do. It's this technology called Circle Vision 360, and apparently it's a kind of an old technology. I thought it was pretty new. But back in I think even the 1960s, they had it's a technology developed by Disney, and they even had it back in the 1960s. So not super new, but I know that they're still using it today, and they're making it even better. What it basically is a series of cameras arranged, I think it's 8 cameras arranged in a circular position so that you can see what's happening from 8 different angles, kind of like a 360 vision. So you can see not only what's happening in front of you, but also behind you and to the side, to the left and to the right. And then they have special theaters that are developed for this type of filmmaking, where they'll project the video on all these screens, and you can see that in the picture to the right. So people will stand in the middle of the room and look all around them and have this movie kind of playing on all sides of them. So just something interesting I wanted to share with you since we're talking about different camera angles. And I guess this isn't a very good camera angle because they're kind of just showing everything, but it still was interesting and I wanted to share it with you. Okay, and I think with Blu-ray discs, sometimes you can even change the camera angles, so that's kind of interesting to know. Alright, so back to our lesson on cinematic angles. What are your options as a writer? How can you choose the best angles in your writing? Well, first of all, you can use a zooming in technique. This is where you talk about the carpet under your toes, or you talk about the texture of the cracker that you're eating. So you really zoom in. And for this lesson, I decided I was going to show you some camera angles, some screenshots from the Pixar movie Up. So I'm using these as examples. So you can see in this picture, it was zooming in to something, it's zooming into a page of this book. You can just see one picture, one compass, one hand. So zooming in. And you can use this technique in your own writing, especially if there's a lot happening. Sometimes it's really nice to slow down and just focus on one thing, one important detail. So that's something fun that you can use in your own writing. Now you can also do the opposite, which is to zoom out. And I thought this was very effectively done in Up. Um, in the movie, you see Mr. Fredricksen, who is, you can kind of see him on the porch there. You can see him getting ready for the day, eating breakfast, and then he comes out and sits on his porch, and as soon as he sits down, the camera immediately zooms out, and you notice that it's not just an average house. This house is in the middle of a construction zone. So this picture kind of captures that. It even zooms out more, and you can see this huge kind of skyscraper going up on all sides of his house. So that's a very Up use that technique very effectively, and we can also use that in our writing. So if you've been kind of bogged down in your writing with a lot of dialogue, a lot of detail, it might be a good idea to zoom out and see the big picture. So that's something else that you can do in your own writing. All right, so let's go ahead and look at two more techniques. I'm calling this technique the fly up. This is basically where you look up and see what's going on above you. Sometimes we're so focused on what's going on right in front of us that we kind of forget what's going on around us. We have the sky above us, we might have airplanes, we might have, well, we of course have the stars up there, and if you go up even further, there's galaxies and all this amazing stuff. So don't ignore what's going on up there. And again, in Up, there was this kind of funny scene where Russell, the little guy up there climbing the rope, you think that he's climbing the rope, but all of a sudden the camera zooms up and you can kind of see him barely getting started. It kind of sounded like he was, you know, dozens of feet up there, but actually he only climbed a few inches. So you could do this in your writing if you're describing things that are going on just at eye level. You can go ahead and make the camera zoom up and describe the sky, describe the canopy of trees above you, whatever else is up there. All right, and I'm calling our last technique fall down. It's basically where you look down. So there are things going on above us. There are also things going on below us. So this is kind of this is a fun technique, especially if you're describing a large crowd. It's kind of like where you have sort of like an airplane view of what's going on. You just look it down, and you can notice things kind of in a different way. So in Up, they had this one shot where they're enjoying a picnic, and I thought that this was a nice camera angle for that shot. So you can do the same thing in your own writing. If it's a scene where maybe there's a lot going on and you think that kind of flying over the scene would be a good way of describing that, that's a technique that you can use. So as you can see, very basic techniques: zooming in, zooming out, panning up, panning down. Very basic techniques, but they can be very effective in your writing. It's a lot more interesting than just describing what's going on right in front of you without zooming in at all or zooming out at all or looking up or down. It can be really boring. You might get your story across, but you can have so much more fun when you're paying attention to the angles of your writing. So assignments for today are simply to watch this lesson video, and then there's a brainstorming exercise. So today we're going to be writing about something scary that happened to us, and you could just describe that story by telling us how it happened, but we can have a lot more fun when we pay attention to the different angles that we can use. So if there's a mean dog chasing you, you can zoom into that dog and see its teeth. And then you could zoom out and see how far away you are from everyone else. So you can have a lot more fun when you pay attention to angles. So this warm-up exercise, or brainstorming exercise, will just help you plan for your story and to think of various angles that you could use to describe your story. So kind of write down what your scary story is all about here, and then think of the different camera angles. So zooming in, what are some things that you could zoom in on? What are some things you could zoom out for? What are some ways you could fly up and fall down? So you don't obviously have to use all these angles. This is just a brainstorming sheet to help you think of the different angles, just to be aware of your different options. So that's what that is all about. Complete the brainstorming exercise and then write your 8-sentence story. And again, we're writing about a scary moment in our lives. Then post your work, leave 2 comments on other students' work. Make sure you distribute the comments so everyone gets a few. And lastly, submit your progress report. So those are the assignments for today. In summary, think like a filmmaker to choose the best angle. So there are many angles to choose. Choose the one that works best for that particular scene, for that particular story. And also, when you transition between angles, maybe you're really excited about this and you want to do all the angles. Well, that's okay as long as you transition smoothly between the angles. If you're constantly changing angles, you might make your audience or your readers kind of dizzy. So if you're transitioning between angles, like let's say you're describing something very small and then you want to step back and describe the whole scene, well, go ahead and actually have your character or have yourself, whoever's in your story, have them actually step back and kind of notice everything going on around them. Help transition your reader. Otherwise, they might get kind of dizzy. And lastly, experiment. If you start off with a lot of zooming in techniques and it's not working, try something else. Maybe describe the scene from kind of an airplane view. Experiment with different angles. In the little story that I wrote for today, I wrote it like 3 or 4 times because I didn't like the way that it was going. So there are a lot of angles to choose from. Just choose the ones that work best for your story, and it might take several experiments to get it right. All right, well, this wraps up lesson 4 on cinematic angles. I'm really excited about this lesson. I hope that you have a lot of fun. If you have any questions, please let me know.